It's like we're just bombarded with information constantly. It's like drinking from a fire hose 24/7. Today we're going old school, tackling a very modern problem, information overload. We're taking a deep dive into the concept of wisdom, specifically how it's portrayed in Proverbs 8.
It really is amazing how relevant these ancient texts still are. Thousands of years ago, people were already trying to figure out how to sift through the noise and find the truth.
Yeah, it is. And what's so cool about Proverbs 8, wisdom isn't just like some abstract concept. It's presented as this active force, almost like a character calling out to people, offering guidance. But
Mhm.
there's a catch, though. Ignoring her has some serious consequences.
It's like she's laying out the stakes right up front, give us a glimpse of what we stand to gain or lose.
Right. So let's just dive into this sales pitch wisdom is giving us. The imagery is so striking. She's standing at crossroads, city gates, places where people are making decisions, and she's not being subtle about it.
No, she's not.
She's making sure her message is heard. But it makes you wonder, how do we even encounter wisdom in our modern world?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. We don't have a literal wisdom figure shouting at us on the street corner, but maybe the places where we gather information, seek advice, or face those tough decisions, maybe those are our modern day crossroads and city gates.
I like that. It could be anything. It could be scrolling through social media. It could be having a heart-to-heart with a mentor. It's about recognizing those moments where we're being called to make a choice.
Absolutely, yeah.
And speaking of choices, what wisdom offers goes beyond knowledge, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's prudence, discretion, the ability to make good judgments, essential skills for navigating just all the complexities of life.
Right.
And she really highlights the value proposition, doesn't she? Wisdom is more precious than gold, rubies, anything your heart desires.
It is interesting, isn't it? The text points to something so fundamental about us as humans. Our tendency to chase after these fleeting things when true fulfillment comes from something so much deeper.
You think that new gadget is going to make you happy? Nah, try a little wisdom instead.
Yeah.
But here's where things get really intriguing. Wisdom's not just about contemplation, right? It's linked to action.
Yeah, it's about bringing wisdom into the real world. The text talks about kings ruling justly, princes governing well, making wise choices that impact not just ourselves, but our community.
So think about your own life for a second. What areas need a dose of wise decision-making? Career, relationships, finances. Where are you at a crossroads right now, facing a choice? That's where wisdom is trying to get our attention. But then Proverbs takes us beyond just those practical applications of wisdom. It goes into its origins.
Yeah, it
Yep.
does.
And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. We're not just talking about making wise choices in our day-to-day life. It's like we get this glimpse of wisdom's role in the big picture.
You're talking about that part where wisdom describes her existence before creation, right?
Yeah.
That's just mind-blowing.
Exactly. Before the mountains were settled, it says, before the dust of the earth. It's like this picture of wisdom as this ancient fundamental force, like woven into existence itself.
Present at the dawn of creation. And what I find so powerful is the image of wisdom delighting in the world, rejoicing in mankind. It just adds this emotional depth, this idea that wisdom isn't just some cold, abstract concept, but something that cares.
Right, yeah. It hints at this idea that wisdom is not just rules and principles, but about actively participating in creation, finding joy in existence, guiding us towards a life of meaning and purpose. What stands out to you most about wisdom's message so far?
Honestly, it's the contrast that gets me. You have wisdom as this like joyful, life-giving force, but then these stark warnings about ignoring her. Choosing wisdom, it leads to life and favor, but rejecting it, you harm yourself, you love death. Intense stuff.
It is powerful language, no doubt. It's supposed to get your attention. But I think it's important to remember that wisdom isn't out there inflicting harm. She's stating the natural consequences of the choices we make. Just as making healthy choices leads to well-being, ignoring wisdom has outcomes too.
So it's less about punishment, more about cause and effect. If you're always making unwise decisions, you're going to have more struggles, less fulfillment.
Exactly. And when the text talks about death, it's not necessarily literal death. It's pointing towards a kind of emptiness, spiritual or emotional maybe. A life lived without purpose, meaning connection to something greater than yourself.
That makes sense. But it still leaves us with the big question. How do we seek wisdom in our daily lives? Where are those doorways we should be watching for?
Well, remember how wisdom was standing at crossroads and city gates? Those were places where people gathered, exchanged ideas, made decisions. So one doorway might be the people we surround ourselves with, our friends, our families, mentors, anyone who can offer us guidance. Perspective.
I see what you mean. It's about being intentional about who we let influence us. But it's not just passively absorbing information from others, is it? We need to be discerning, too.
You're absolutely right. Not all advice is created equal, right? We have to critically evaluate the advice we receive. And that means developing our own inner compass, sensing what's truly wise and beneficial for us.
Which leads us to another doorway,
Yeah.
our experiences. The good and the bad, the ups and downs, those are opportunities to learn, to grow.
Oh, absolutely. Every experience, whether it's positive or negative, has a lesson. It's almost like life is throwing these little wisdom tests at us, and how we respond kind of shapes who we become.
It's not just about living life, it's about examining it, asking ourselves what worked well and what we could have done differently.
Precisely. Those moments of reflection are pure gold. That's where we extract those valuable insights. But I'd add another doorway to the list. It might seem a little counterintuitive. Silence and solitude.
Okay, now that's interesting. You're talking about creating space to look inward, quiet the noise, and listen to our inner voice.
Exactly. In a world that's constantly bombarding us with distractions, it's so crucial to just carve out some space for stillness. Quiet contemplation. That's where we connect with ourselves on a deeper level and tap into that innate wisdom that we all have within us.
So we have the people we surround ourselves with, our experiences, and those quiet moments of reflection. Any other doorways we should be on the lookout for?
Well, this might sound a little cliche, but I really believe a love of learning is essential. Reading books, exploring different points of view, having those deep conversations, it all just broadens our understanding, helps us see the world in new ways.
Like that saying, the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. Every new piece of knowledge opens up a whole universe of possibilities. But with all this talk about seeking wisdom, it's important to remember that it's not something you find once and then you have it forever.
Yeah, that's an important point. Wisdom is a journey, not a destination. A constant process of growth and refinement. Not like finding a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's about cultivating a mindset, approaching life with curiosity, humility, a willingness to learn.
And that's where that watching daily part comes in. Staying attuned to those opportunities for growth, those moments where wisdom is trying to reach us.
Yeah, it's an ongoing practice, not a one-time treasure hunt.
Yeah.
But I can see how that could feel daunting. How do we even know if we're on the right track? How do we measure our wisdom progress?
Right. If wisdom isn't about reaching some final destination, how do we even know if we're heading in the right direction?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. It's less about checking boxes and more about cultivating certain qualities.
Yeah.
Qualities like,
Qualities like what? You've got to give us some clues.
well, there's no magic formula, but, there are certain characteristics we often associate with wisdom. Humility, for example. Being open to learning from others, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
That makes sense. Being willing to admit when we're wrong. Learn from those mistakes.
Exactly, yeah. And compassion. Compassion's huge. Being able to understand, empathize with others, even those who hold completely different views.
So it's not just what you know, it's how you treat other people. Our actions speak volumes about how much wisdom we've really cultivated.
For sure. And I think one of the most important qualities, that ability to hold multiple perspectives at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
Being able to see all sides, understand where others are coming from, even if we don't agree with them.
That's so valuable, especially now when it's easy to get caught up in our own little echo chambers.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not about tolerating different viewpoints, but actively seeking them out, challenging our own assumptions, being open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Because let's face it, none of us has a monopoly on the truth. We're all learning and growing together.
That's it. That brings us back to Proverbs 8. Wisdom isn't a destination, it's a path. A way of being in the world, with ourselves, with each other. It's a path that leads to a richer and more meaningful life.
So it's not about becoming some all-knowing sage sitting on a mountaintop, detached from everything. It's about making those wise choices, doing those compassionate things every single day.
Yes. Beautifully put. It's a journey that's open to all of us. No matter our background, education, or experiences, we all have that capacity for wisdom within us.
That is so encouraging. So it's not just for some elite group. It's something we can all cultivate, nurture within ourselves.
Absolutely. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more we seek wisdom, the more we find it. And the more we find it, the more we realize how much more there is to learn.
It's a lifelong adventure. To wrap up our deep dive into Proverbs 8, we've seen that wisdom is so much more than knowledge. It's this active force that's calling out to us, inviting us on this journey of growth and transformation.
And the stakes are high. Ignoring wisdom, it leads to emptiness, spiritual, emotional. But when we embrace it, that's where we find true fulfillment, purpose, connection to something greater than ourselves.
So as you go about your day, we want to leave you with a question. What resonated most with you about wisdom's sales pitch? What's one small step you can take today to invite more wisdom into your life?
Yeah, maybe it's reaching out to a mentor, carving out some quiet time, or even just paying closer attention to the choices you're making throughout your day.
However you choose to seek it, remember, this is just the beginning. We encourage you to keep exploring. Maybe reread Proverbs 8. Look into wisdom literature from other cultures and traditions. There's a whole world out there.
And who knows, you just might find that the pursuit of wisdom is the most fulfilling adventure of all.